Chapter 30. The Montego started no problem, and we left the garage with a bit of dramatic flair that only a 30-plus-year-old car with a bad muffler can provide. Tiffany looked like I felt, excited, nervous, but also very pissed. "Please tell me you have a plan," she said. "Oh, I have a plan, all right. Maybe an outline would be more correct." "Oh, sweet, merciful crap, we're doomed." I actually laughed a bit and discussed a few details I had worked out. "The goal," I said, "is to make an example of the person who carried it out. Sure, they were just following orders, but the next time an order is given to take out someone close to me, I want them to be scared." "Well, if this works, they will certainly remember you. Whether that will stop them in the future, I guess we will have to wait and see. If we live long enough, of course. So how do you plan on attracting them to the coffee shop?" I pulled out my smartphone from my jacket pocket. With this, I grabbed it from the counter on my way out. Depending on whether they are watching the phone lines closely, I figure within the half hour they should be descending upon us. The sun had set, but still gave a deep-colored glow on the horizon. The shop would be closing anyway, so it was as good a place to pick a fight as any. Plus, there was a hospital across the street for patching up all the bloody hunters. Aren't I considerate? We pulled into the lot and saw that the lights were still on and chairs still down. The parking lot seemed especially dark as I realized the street lights were not on. I flipped the sign as we walked in, and I recognized the kid, wiping down the counters as the weekender. "Hey, I'll be closing up for you. Go on home. I'll let Mama Joe know, all right?" I didn't have to tell him twice because he yelled his thanks and nearly vanished. Now we wait. I pulled out the cell phone and gave Tiffany a wink as it came to life. Now was as good a time as any to calm and center myself with a little piano. Tiffany was a bundle of nerves as well, with her hand on her gun in the small of her back. I sat down and played some Busoni, and thought of Mrs. Giovanni. The anger swelled and then ebbed away into sorrow, the song becoming smooth. If I didn't know any better, she was still sitting beside me conducting. Tiffany was calming down too, leaning on the back of the upright piano like the first time I met her. After several songs, my phone started to ring. We both looked at the unidentified number calling me, and I answered. "Hello?" I actually had several smart-ass comments ready to go, but I couldn't decide on which one to use, so I had to abort. That happens sometimes. There was no reply anyway, and the line went dead. "Looks like they're on their way." My pulse started speeding up, so I shifted the genre to something a bit faster, the chase scene from Pirates of the Caribbean. Tiffany rolled her eyes. I focused my will on Mrs. Giovanni, my source, and the world shifted to blue. Turning back to the seating area of the coffee shop, I slowly raised my hand. All the tables and chairs floated up off the ground till they were pinned high against the ceiling. The room looked totally empty except for the piano, a dashing piano player, and a smoking hot chick in combat boots. I played on, waiting for the action to start. There was no warning when the first bullet tore through the window and nearly smashed into my skull. Fortunately, I was already in the zone and my power was engaged. The bullet stopped a few feet from the side of my head. I played on. Slowly, I turned to look at the window and the hunter that was undoubtedly still looking at me from across the street. With the lights still on inside the shop and the street lights out, I had no chance of seeing where he was exactly. 3 more shots rang out in rapid succession, and I realized that there were several hunters now gathered at the ready, all bullets stopping long before they reached their intended targets. A few of them were aimed at Tiffany, too, which was nice. I wouldn't want her to feel left out. She smiled back at me, and I played louder. The windows exploded into 1,000 shards of glass as dozens of bullets flew our way. Shotgun pellets, .45 caliber pistol rounds, and high-velocity rifle rounds all came to a halt in the middle of the room. Tiffany had covered her face in preparation for the impact, which never came. She looked at me and smiled, so I played on. The bullets had stopped, and I looked over my shoulder at the piles of broken glass. Mama Joe was going to be hot tomorrow when she finds out. At least there was no bullet holes to patch up yet. The bell on the door rang, indicating someone had just entered. I had my back to them as I played, but Tiffany had her gun out at her side. "Remember what I said about shooting them," I said to her softly. "The power will fail if I know you're going to shoot them." "It's just a deterrent," she said with a smile and clicked off the safety. "And whatever you do, don't look up." "Welcome. Come on in," I said with a smile and a full dose of sarcasm. When I spun on the bench to fully see my audience, I was a bit astounded. The large empty room was half full of hunters, most in leather or dark clothes. One was in a police uniform. There was at least a dozen of them squared off against Tiffany and me, the hunters on one side of the room, us on the other. "Let me guess," I said to one particularly large black man in the front. "You want a frappuccino with extra whipped cream, am I right? Skim milk, too, probably." The hunter took a step forward and leveled the shotgun at me. "You don't know the first thing about me." It was just too much to bear. I had to keep going. "Au contraire," I said. "I read your bio on the Fallen dating site. As I recall, you enjoy long walks on the beach, old man fondling, and flannel thongs." A few of the other hunters smirked, and I sent him over the edge. He fired his shotgun at me. The blue world around me lit up the shotgun pellets with huge distortion trail. It was easy to stop them, but this time I pushed them back and held them an inch in front of his face. Priceless. Several of the other guns dropped, and they all backed away slightly. "I need a name. The name of the person who killed Mrs. Giovanni. And be warned, my patience is running extremely low. And I'm really hungry. Any chance any of you brought some fried chicken? No? Not too bad. It may have been just enough to keep you alive through the night. So, who will be the lucky winner? Most of you are not going home. Just the person who tells me the name." The room filled with tension as the hunters looked between each other, unsure of the next move. The black hunter with the shotgun never took his eyes off me. Instead, he fired again. This time, several other hunters followed suit, plus one throwing knife. The throwing knife actually confused me a little because it was moving so much slower than the bullets. Plus, it had very little distortion trail. Still, I managed to stop everything and the bullets fell to the floor. "I despise you so much I can't even see straight," the hunter growled more than spoke. "Perhaps we need to do this the old-fashioned way." He dropped the shotgun and slapped his fist with the other hand and started coming forward. Tiffany just raised her gun, level with his head. "Please, give me a reason." "Your death will not be quick, you traitorous bitch." She did not hesitate and fired into his face, his body pitching backward, and the group behind him was covered with blood and fragments. "Who's next?" There was a rattle and the jingle of a bell as a hunter tried to get the door open. I held it closed with the power and smiled as the panic grew. A few of the hunters ran for the window, but most of them stayed put. "I need to know the name. Or maybe the individual is here with us tonight. Step forward and your comrades can leave. See how generous I am? Well, except for this poor chap," I said, pointing to the corpse on the floor. The sight of a dead body no longer affected me like it had just a few days ago. I had changed. Commotion out the window pulled my attention. A small flicker of light from the sidewalk lit a figure holding something in his hand. It took me a second to realize it was a bottle with a flaming rag stuffed in the opening. A Molotov cocktail. A brief moment of panic flooded my mind that was enough to lose the grasp on the furniture hanging on the ceiling. The bottle flipped through the air, making a spiraling flame pattern. The falling tables and chairs and the bottle hit the ground at the same time. Tiffany and I had been careful not to walk under the tables for this reason. The panic caused by the crash was exponentially amplified by the addition of gasoline and fire. The hunters screamed as most were crushed, and others sprayed with fire. It dawned on me that whoever threw the bottle was willing to sacrifice a dozen hunters just to restart me. My immediate attention was on the spreading fire. "Finn, do something!" Tiffany screamed. Her screams echoed in my mind as I felt the power build and time slow. I pulled all the flaming liquid into a large pool in the center of the room. Several spots had already left scorch marks on the counter and walls, but nothing had caught fire yet. The pool of flaming liquid continued to condense until it was the size of a large softball. A smile spread across my face as I realized I had just practiced controlling a ball of water this size. Of course, this ball was on fire, but it handled the same. I glanced around the room, and most of the hunters were pinned under the tables. The few that escaped the collapse were frozen in shock, watching the ball of flaming gasoline float before them. "I will just ask one more time, and then you will burn alive," I said, floating the fireball above the head of one of the hunters. He was visibly shaking, raising a hand in my direction, but keeping his eyes glued on the floating ball. The ball was shrinking in size as the gasoline burned off. If he waited another few minutes, I would have much less leverage. Apparently, he wasn't making the connection, and he eagerly answered, "Horatio! His name's Horatio! He was Pietro's old partner before you blew his head off." "Oh, yeah, that was me. God, what a day I've had." A flurry of activity outside pulled my attention to the individual who threw the Molotov cocktail in the first place. Horatio, maybe? I couldn't see who was standing outside, but I heard a car door slam. I pushed with my palms open, and the fireball raced out the broken window and splashed fire, covering a car, the outline now fully visible. "Come to Papa," I said more to myself, and walked to the window. This car screeched its wheels and raced away, the fire growing to cover the rear of the car as well, a true hell chariot. I focused all my attention on popping the tires, slowing time, superheating a tiny section, and pulling the air outwards. Never having practiced this technique, I had no idea whether it would work. Finally, a loud pop sounded and the car skidded, but continued racing away. It rounded the corner and out of sight. Damn. Till next time, Horatio. Back in the shop, Tiffany had her gun trained on the few remaining conscious individuals. "We should restart them all," she said with a terrifying level of malice in her voice. There was no love lost for her old colleagues. One of them was the policeman, partially pinned under a table, a wound from his head pumping fresh blood down his face. His gun was out and lying next to him. I bent down and picked up his gun and pressed it into his open wound, making him wince in pain. "You're supposed to be one of the good guys," I said. "Protect the weak, justice for all. You know the motto. I pity you, you pathetic piece of shit." I dropped the gun in front of him and said, "Go ahead and call it in. I'll be interested to hear how you're going to spin this one." I looked at Tiffany, who was shaking her head, genuinely upset that we were leaving them alive. We stepped through the rubble and out the broken window. Sirens could be heard in the distance. Wait till they realized there was a wounded officer at the scene. We were about to pull away when a single shot sounded inside the shop. Tiffany and I looked at each other, realizing what had just happened. Make that an officer down. The Montego rumbled away, looking as inconspicuous as an oversized avocado rust bucket with a failing muffler can look. 4 squad cars passed us going the other direction at high speed. Mama Joe was going to be pissed. Sorry. I probably should have picked a more innocent location. Oh well. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, and my mind went through the limited file I had on Horatio, the overcaffeinated chihuahua that wanted to carve me a new breathing hole the first time I met him, was about to regret his life choices. My phone rang from my pocket and startled both of us. I pulled it out and did not recognize the number. "Here we go, Tiffany. Guess who this might be?" I put the phone on speaker and waited for the hunter on the other side to pile on the idle threats. "Where is he?" a woman's voice shouted through the phone. Tiffany and I just looked quizzically at each other. Tiffany finally spoke. "Nella, is that you? Where is who?" Nella was hysterical. "Daniel, tell me please that you have him." Again, we looked at each other with confusion. "Nella, we left him there with you. We haven't seen him since we left." I could hear the desperation in her voice, mixed with a bit of rage, of course. "You son of a bitch. I told you not to go out and pick a fight, and now Daniel is out there in the midst of it." The panic instantly hit, my heart jumping the pace, adrenaline flowing again. "Where did he go? Why would he leave?" "You stupid, arrogant boy," she yelled, the rage taking over. "He left to go help you. We were all discussing your foolishness, and the next thing you know, he's gone. No one even saw him leave." "But why would he just leave, Nella? He hasn't left before, has he?" "He left to help you." She paused, choked up. When she spoke again, it was with a hint of sadness. "We were discussing how there is very little chance you would survive. He probably overheard." I felt the anger start to build in me as well. "You call me careless, but you don't bother looking over your shoulder to see if the kid is in the room, listening to your adult conversation?" Tiffany snapped her fingers and pointed heatedly at me. I instantly regretted putting this back on Nella, who had gone silent. "Forget how we got here, Nella," I said in a softer tone. Tiffany still glaring at me. "The important thing is that we figure out what to do from here. What do you want me to do?" Tiffany nodded, indicating that I was back on the right track. Nella still said nothing. Someone needed to take charge, so I continued. "Tiffany and I will stay in the area and keep an eye out for him. Have someone check the bus terminals and taxis. Does he have any other way to travel? And what about Shadrach?" Nella finally broke her silence and softly replied, "He has a bike. It's missing. The dog is here, still recovering." "Okay, one-handed white kid on a bike in the wrong part of town. Should be no problem to find him," I replied with as much enthusiasm as I could muster. "That's the problem. He sticks out too much. Find him, Finn," her voice now pleading. "I will." The line went dead, and all my personal vengeance issues faded away. The safety of that kid was now everything. We immediately turned around and made a wide sweep on the side streets that Daniel may have taken if he surmised that we would be at the coffee shop. My phone started ringing again, the number blocked. Tiffany hit the speaker button. No one said anything for several seconds, till a male voice, smooth and arrogant, finally spoke. "You are quite entertaining, Mr. Rourke." His voice was like acid in my veins. "But as much as I enjoy this pleasurable departure from the malaise of my daily existence, it has endured quite long enough. Your antics are beginning to have a measurable impact on my assets. All that is about to change. If you want to see the boy again, you will come with us. No negotiations. This is your only chance to ever see him again. Alive, anyway." My voice was immediate. "Done. When and where?" Tiffany's jaw was hanging open in shock as she silently protested. "Stay where you are with your phone. We will pick you up and bring you to a location with the boy." "That doesn't work for me. You can just renege at any time and keep the boy." "This is not a negotiation," the voice said in a flat and almost bored tone. The line went dead. Tiffany was frantic as I pulled the car over to the side of the road. "You idiot! He has no intention of returning Daniel, and now you're offering yourself up for free as well? How does this make any sense?" She was right, of course, but I needed to buy the kid some time, and I still had a few tricks up my sleeve. "Take the car back to the safe house," I said, "and let them know what's going on. I'll contact you as soon as possible." Tiffany was shaking with fear, or maybe anger. "So I get to run away and you get restarted. What then? Better for us both to restart. I'm not leaving." "Tiffany, please. I will get through this. You never expected to make it this far." I smoothed a tear on her cheek. "This is not the end. I have a feeling that I'm meant for something bigger. Just tell Nella I'm sorry." "Tell her yourself when you get back." She grabbed me and hugged me tightly. "For the record, this is a bad idea." I smiled and waved as the Montego rumbled away. The quiet of the street became quickly overwhelming as she turned the corner. I didn't have to wait long as a black Cadillac Escalade pulled up, the door popping open. Inside were Anand and the driver, an Asian man who looked to be no more than 18 years old. "Welcome. Please sit in the back with me so we can talk." Anand had a devilish grin. I felt like the fly, casually walking into the spider's web. I must have hesitated a second too long as he said, "We are actually on a tight schedule, if you want to see the boy." The inside of the SUV smelled of cigars and cheap hookers, or maybe that was his aftershave. The driver pulled away as soon as the door closed, and we sped through town and onto the interstate. We were headed the opposite direction from Philly, towards Atlantic City. Anand looked a bit too comfortable, and I felt my palms starting to sweat. "How long till we make the exchange?" I asked. "And why are you so interested in me?" Anand just smiled and pulled a cigar out of his jacket coat. Lighting it, He then said with a smile, "Not long. You are becoming less and less interesting to us every day. It will be up to you how long you live." He smiled with perfect white teeth and blew smoke in my face. I was about to protest, but a dizzy feeling came over me, and the car felt like it was rolling. The arrogant smile was still visible through the hazy cigar smoke as my eyes became heavy, and then all went black.